given my nearly 4 decades of observing the oil industry, many people have said, can you give us some hints on how to succeed in the oil business? And of course I can, but first I have to say, it's financial success in the oil business. You don't have to wear a cowboy hat or boots, but you should try at least to talk like a Texan. That seems to be a big factor. And I will recommend, as always, my book, which now that it's out, I can give up my vow to stop shaving until it's done. So, in the early days of the oil business, you made money by finding oil. Generally speaking, if you found oil, you would make money. In the later years, the 1890s, money was made by controlling oil. John D. Rockefeller used his control of refineries and pipelines to basically set prices the way he liked and squeeze profits out of that. In the next decade, the best approach to making lots of money was to find lots of oil. This is James Guffey, who drilled the first well at Spindletop, the first gusher in the North American continent, which transformed the oil industry as well as oil consumption. Sadly, one of his partners up in West Virginia, Charles Lynch, did not go with him, so that his descendants, such as your humble narrator, did not have financial success in the oil business. Now, of course, if you find lots of oil, you want to be sure you find it where the natives won't set taxes too high. Persia turned out to be a great place for several decades. What is now British Petroleum found huge oil fields and prospered quite well. By the 1920s, you wanted to be sure that wherever you found oil, it was someplace where the government and its minions would not force you to shut down your wells. This is a picture of the Texas Rangers, who, among other people, were used to close down wells per order of the Texas Railroad Commission when the glut sent prices down to a few pennies. A number of people resisted, not successfully. So that takes us to the current present. You can no longer just find oil. The taxes are set such around the world that if you make a large oil find, the effect is that you get large volumes of oil, you make decent profits, but the government gets most of the money. So what can you do? Well, you can try trading financials. A number of companies have made good money buying and selling futures contracts, as well as green mailing. A certain Texas oil man is famous for that. You can also hire a bunch of management consultants. This has worked in a lot of cases. Of course, it's also failed in a few cases. And I'm not going to say anything since some of my best friends are management consultants. In real estate, they say location, location, location. I would add to that timing, timing, timing. Caltex, the former subsidiary jointly owned by Texaco and Chevron, bought land in 1920 in Singapore at the time when the country was severely undeveloped and land was very cheap. Almost a century later, they sold off the land and found that, well, things had changed. Singapore was a bustling metropolis, nation state, whatever you want to call it, and land prices had gone up quite a bit, which means that Caltex made a huge amount of money. How do you duplicate that now? Well, there are other places that might resemble Singapore in 1920 or even be a little more attractive. For example, you have Somalia. Lots of land. Prices, I understand, are quite cheap. Looks like you can even get some good fish. And then there's Afghanistan. I think maybe the political risk is non-trivial, but let's face it, the land costs next to nothing, and who knows, Central Asia has been a powerhouse in the past, maybe it will be again. And the really adventurous, of course, have Detroit. Who knows? Maybe Detroit will turn out to experience a renaissance, and you'll find that your investment in real estate there has paid off handsomely. Another alternative is Be Cute. This is a car that Chevron sold back in the 1990s if you bought gasoline from their stations. They were so popular that there was a run on gasoline from Chevron stations, and they made very handsome profits. I'm not exactly sure the best way to go cute, though. Maybe you want to talk to Hasbro instead of McKinsey and Company. And yeah, it's easier for some to be cute than others. You can see here your humble narrator back roughly, I'm going to say about 1972, with two of his brothers and his grandmother Lynch, married to the aforementioned Charles Lynch, who did not join James Duffy at Spindletop. So oil companies, you think, are gasoline sellers. That's their biggest product line, right? Well, they actually can make a higher profit margin on espressos. In the 1990s, companies realized that while they didn't want to diversify into, say, department stores, every gasoline station was, in fact, a small convenience store. So they started adding snack bars. Sometimes you even see fast food outlets inside them, but making more money selling potato chip sandwiches, coffee, and so forth. My favorite story comes from Germany, which in the 90s, Exxon was in fact the biggest baker. Sounds strange? Well, there's a rational, although kind of dumb explanation. German regulations did not allow bakers to be open on Sundays, and the Germans liked their bread fresh. So Exxon stations made a lot of money selling bread to German customers. So Exxon, maybe the next CEO should be Gordon Ramsay, somebody who's can come up with good product line for their many outlets around the world. That doesn't necessarily involve petroleum. Now, another thing you can do to make money is you invest, you go out, you find and produce oil, and then hope something bad happens, like Katrina. You hope that Katrina or another similar hurricane hits everybody else's facilities, drives up the price, and then you just collect the money. Alternatively, if you don't want to be a, shall we say, passive investor, you could try delivering explosives to people who will use them against oil facilities owned by your competitors, perhaps in Iraq or Libya, Nigeria, Louisiana, something like that. It doesn't require you to do anything fancy other than produce oil and then hope for high prices. You can also try to drive the price up. You can buy copies of books about peak oil and tell everybody that, oh yes, the oil price has to go up. It can only go up. $140, we were told in 2008, was just the beginning of the price rise. Of course, once the price goes up, you should probably sell off your reserves, but sadly, the industry seems to be much better at buying high and selling low. Now, you can always think arbitrage. There are a lot of people involved in building tunnels. This is, I believe, one in the U.S.-Mexican border. So you could think about ways to hire these people and move oil from a low-price environment to a high-price environment. For example, you could smuggle U.S. light oil to Mexico, gasoline in Venezuela to Colombia, Saudi or Nigerian gasoline to their neighbors where the prices are higher. And, you know, the good side of this is you could employ a lot of people like Mexican drug gang members who would otherwise be engaged in, shall we say, unsavory activities. And let's face it, a lot of people make money selling things that are less useful than petroleum products. You may go into any drugstore and you will see shelves of weight loss supplements, pills, mixes, just about everything you can imagine. Of course, when you walk outside the store, you will get the very quick impression that these are not working. No personal comments, please. But convince people that, crude oil or gasoline can help you lose weight, right? And, if it's not working out too well, you do a little photoshopping. Put our friend Rex Tillerson in here and have him become your marketing spokesman. Alternatively, celebrity endorsements. Get someone like Justin Bieber to say, "When I drive, I always use gasoline. It's what makes me move." Okay, I don't do a very good impression of Justin Bieber. My apologies. There are fads. Attach oil to the latest fad. For instance, paleo food. I mean, what could be more paleo than oil? It's the original paleo product. So, if people are willing to pay extra for something that's supposedly paleo in nature, why can't you convince them to pay extra for oil? Remember Sinclair Oil? Their symbol was the dinosaur, after all. But let's face it, what's more American than suing people? Ask BP. After the Macondo disaster, supposedly thousands of people made significant amounts of money without any real strong justification. But hey, this is America. But oil is a commodity, you say. It's hard to get a big markup on a commodity. Well, that's not always the case. Perrier, which is essentially bubble water, goes for about $270 a barrel. So, how can you make oil more attractive? Le pétrole. And I think add at least 75% to the price. Other people have found a slightly different approach. Conventional dog food goes for about $1 a pound. Holistic dog food goes for about $2.25 a pound. Organic dog food goes for $4 a pound, essentially a 300% markup for something that you will never, in fact, eat. But nothing compares to enhanced dog water, $200 a barrel. All you need to do now, if you're an oil company executive, is figure out a way to get dogs to drink oil. Political correctness, well, despite the election of President Trump, there's still a lot of people out there who worry about being politically correct. So here's a drill bit that is colored pink in support of breast cancer research or awareness. Who could be more politically correct than an oil driller, after all? Of course, we all want to save the planet, but that's not so easy when you're talking about a huge drilling rig. Well, there is something you can do. Insist that everyone recycle their equipment. Save the planet. Or you could at least save a few species. Use of petrochemicals to develop synthetics for rhinoceros horn or shark fins would go a long way towards saving those various species. Elephant tusk is another, and it's just hard to believe in this day and age we can't come up with a synthetic that would fool even the most traditional Asian healer. But let's face it, we have to admit the truth about pollutants in fracking. This is a list: 6 known or probable carcinogens, 22 suspected hormone disruptors, 10 neurotoxins, 10 developmental or reproductive toxins. Oh my God, this fracking is, oh wait, that's not fracking, that's kale actually. So eat more kale, get more hormone disruptors. And I have to say, boy, there's one thing that's become really big these days. It's more of a fad than anything else. Feces, to use the polite word. People have approved and are planning to use fecal transplants for not to replace your existing fecal matter, but to improve your intestinal flora. People are thinking that they could use your fecal matter and separate out precious metals. The Chinese are turning fecal sludge into quote-unquote black gold. That's presumably some kind of fertilizer or even oil, I guess, or some synthetic fuel. And then, of course, DNA testing for dog feces is on the rise in the Seattle area, probably pretty low down on the list of desirable jobs. But, it's important. And let's face it, what could be better, more politically correct, more environmentally correct, more in tune with today's hip millennials than feces? It's renewable. It's all natural. It's green, well, brown. And even better for some of us, consultants have a natural advantage when it comes to working with feces. But the ultimate is an eye barrel. Think how much you could charge for an eye barrel.